King John of England, 1166 to 1216. King John, younger brother of Richard the Lionheart, is often remembered as the villain of Robin Hood legends, and for good reason. His reign was marked by cruelty, betrayal, and greed. He imposed heavy taxes on his people, squeezed money out of the nobility, and often starved political prisoners to death. John also managed to lose almost all of England's lands in France, humiliating his crown and enraging his subjects. His tyrannical behavior led his barons to rebel, forcing him to sign the Magna Carta in 1215, a document meant to limit his power. While John's reign gave birth to one of history's most important charters of rights, it was only because he was such an oppressive ruler that his nobles demanded it. Ivan IV of Russia, Ivan the Terrible, 1530 to 1584. Few monarchs lived up to their nickname quite like Ivan the Terrible. At first, Ivan showed promise. He reformed the Russian government, modernized the army, and expanded the empire. But as his paranoia grew, so did his cruelty. Ivan established the Oprichniki, a secret police force loyal only to him. They terrorized the population, burning villages, executing nobles, and torturing anyone suspected of disloyalty. Ivan himself was prone to violent fits of rage. In one infamous incident, he struck his own son with an iron staff, killing him. By the end of his reign, Ivan had turned Russia into a land of fear and bloodshed. His legacy is not of reform, but of brutality and madness. Caligula of Rome, 12 to 41 AD. The Roman Empire had its share of questionable emperors, but few reached the extremes of Caligula. At first, he was welcomed as a breath of fresh air after the harsh rule of Tiberius. But Caligula quickly descended into cruelty and excess. Ancient historians tell tales of his sadism, executing people for amusement, forcing families to watch their loved ones die, and even declaring war on the sea by ordering his soldiers to collect seashells as spoils. He allegedly wasted vast sums of Rome's treasury on lavish parties and bizarre projects, including building a floating palace. Caligula's most infamous act was declaring himself a living god, demanding worship from his people. His reign lasted just 4 years before his own guards assassinated him. For Rome, his rule was short but shocking, a case study in how absolute power in unstable hands leads to chaos. King Leopold I of Belgium, 1835 to 1909. King Leopold I's cruelty wasn't inflicted on his own people, but on the millions who lived in the Congo Free State, a territory he personally owned as his private colony. Leopold claimed he was bringing civilization and Christianity to Central Africa. In reality, his regime forced local populations into horrific labor conditions to harvest rubber and ivory. Villagers who didn't meet quotas were beaten, mutilated, or killed. Entire communities were destroyed. It's estimated that between 10 and 15 million people died during Leopold's control of the Congo. While he enriched himself and beautified Brussels with the wealth, the human cost was catastrophic. Leopold II is remembered not as a great king of Belgium, but as one of the most brutal colonizers in history. King Herod the Great, 73 to 4 BC. Herod ruled Judea under Roman authority, and while he was known for grand building projects, including expanding the Temple of Jerusalem, he was equally known for paranoia and cruelty. Herod executed many of his own family members, including his wife and 3 of his sons, fearing they might plot against him. He ruled with an iron fist, crushing any dissent with violence. Herod's name became synonymous with cruelty through the biblical story of the Massacre of the Innocents, where he allegedly ordered the execution of young male children in Bethlehem to eliminate the prophesied Christ child. While historians debate the event's accuracy, Herod's reputation as a ruthless and tyrannical king endures. Emperor Nero of Rome, 37 to 68 AD. Another Roman emperor infamous for cruelty, Nero has become a symbol of corruption and decadence. He is often accused of starting the Great Fire of Rome in 64 AD, or at least of failing to act while the city burned. The legend that he fiddled while Rome burned has become iconic, even if not literally true. What is true is that Nero used the fire's destruction as an excuse to rebuild Rome to his liking, and to blame Christians, sparking the first major persecution of the early church. Nero was also notorious for executing rivals and even family members, including his own mother. He lived lavishly, bankrupted the state, and crushed dissent with cruelty. Eventually, the Roman Senate declared him an enemy of the people, forcing him to commit suicide. But his legacy as one of Rome's most evil emperors remains. King Richard II of England, 1452 to 1485. Richard II's reign was short, but his reputation long-lasting. After the death of his brother Edward IV, Richard declared his nephews, the young princes, illegitimate, taking the throne for himself. The princes were locked in the Tower of London and mysteriously vanished. Most historians believe Richard had them murdered to secure his crown. Though Richard was an able military leader, his reputation was forever darkened by the suspected murder of his nephews. Shakespeare immortalized him as a hunchback villain, crying, a horse, my kingdom for a horse," at the Battle of Bosworth, where Richard was killed. Even if some historians argue he was maligned unfairly, the image of Richard II as one of England's most ruthless kings has endured for over 5 centuries. Emperor Qin Shi Huang of China, 259 to 210 BC. Qin Shi Huang, the first emperor of a unified China, is remembered both for his achievements and his tyranny. He centralized power, standardized weights, measures, and currency, and built massive infrastructure projects, including the foundations of the Great Wall. But his cruelty was equally legendary. He enslaved hundreds of thousands to work on these projects, many of whom died from exhaustion and harsh conditions. He ordered books burned and scholars buried alive to control thought and eliminate dissent. Obsessed with immortality, Qin consumed bizarre elixirs, many containing mercury, which ironically hastened his death. His tomb, guarded by the famous Terracotta Army, is one of history's great wonders, a monument to a ruler whose ambition was matched only by his ruthlessness. Emperor Commodus of Rome, 161 to 192 AD. Commodus, son of the great Marcus Aurelius, showed how quickly an empire could decline under corrupt rule. While his father was the philosopher king of Rome, Commodus was more interested in luxury, gladiatorial games, and his own ego. He fancied himself a living god, renamed Rome after himself, and forced people to worship him as Hercules reincarnated. He even participated in gladiatorial battles, but only after ensuring his opponents were unarmed or disabled. Commodus's reign weakened the Roman Empire, plunging it into instability. His cruelty and narcissism made him despised, and he was eventually strangled by a wrestler in a conspiracy led by his closest allies. His reign marked the beginning of Rome's long decline. King Charles VI of France, Charles the Mad, 1368 to 1422. Charles VI began his reign as a promising ruler, but mental illness turned him into one of France's most dangerous monarchs. Known as Charles the Mad, he suffered from delusions and violent outbursts. At times, he believed he was made of glass and might shatter if touched. Worse, he lashed out at his own men. On one occasion, Charles suddenly drew his sword during a procession and killed 4 of his knights without warning. His instability left France vulnerable during the 100 Years' War, deepening the suffering of his people. While Charles may not have been evil in the sense of calculated cruelty, his madness inflicted chaos, destruction, and misery across his kingdom.